Through the eyes of our most veteran teachers, let's take a moment to celebrate how the Jesuits ready our students and faculty to illuminate the world. This is Hearts on Fire. So I'm here today with Dr. Tommy Romano.
Thank you.
Thanks for taking some time today to talk about your experience here at Jesuit over the years, particularly with Jesuits. So let's set the table, little background. How long have you been at Strike Jesuit now?
This is my 31st year. It's hard to believe, but wow. Yeah, it's 31 years this year.
Yeah. Was it the Jesuits that inspired you to stay?
The Jesuits definitely played a big role.
How many Jesuits do you think you've worked with?
Oh my gosh. It's got to be at least a couple of dozen, including the ones that come here for Regency, you know, and are here for 2 or 3 years, or ones who have done their experiments here, that are in a novitiate still. Probably one of the first Jesuits I remember meeting was Father Leininger. Coming from a seminary experience, I was used to hanging around priests, so I just went up right to a first faculty meeting, sat down right next to him, started a conversation. Everybody goes, "You don't talk to Father Leininger." It's like, well, I just did, and he doesn't bite.
Yeah. Do you remember the conversation?
He says, Mr. Neville said, "I would like to introduce to you Father Zinnemann. And today you're going to see a different side of Father Zinnemann." And Father Leininger looked at me and he says, "Side? A sphere has no sides." And I burst out laughing. Of course, I was the only one that heard him say it. So
right.
Not a good first impression with the faculty laughing at the president of the school.
Yeah. So Father Zinnemann was the president at the time.
Yeah.
What was he like?
Father Zinnemann was great. He was a very kind man, very thoughtful, always welcoming new faculty, checking in, see how you were doing and all that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, over the years, dozens of Jesuits that you've worked with. In what different ways did you work with Jesuits?
Some of the earlier ones that I worked with, Father Bubba Coles, he was I believe he was one of the founding Jesuits here.
He was.
And just a kindly old man, and you'd get him down and sit and have lunch with him, and he would tell you about his experience as a POW during World War II, and you would just say, this guy was a POW, just the gentlest man. Father Jeniskins is also another one that was a very kind man. He was from Louisiana, I believe, and he had that soft Louisiana accent. He did wonderful ceramics works, and so he used to make 2 things for every new teacher: a coffee mug that had Jesuit on one side and your name on the other, and then a crucifix, which is still hanging in my office 31 years later. But Bubba Coles was probably the one I got to know best. He was my spiritual director for a number of years. And then when he retired, eventually he's passed on. But yeah, he was my spiritual director for a while.
What was his role here?
Bubba kind of ran the mailroom, and because he was an older man at that time, and so he kind of ran the mailroom, helped out, I think, a little bit with the dean's office, but was more of kind of like the velvet glove to Brother Casey's iron fist.
That's good. And what was Father Jeniskins' role?
Father Jeniskins worked in the counseling office, so he was a counselor,
And that was during the time when the counselors did both
college and personal counseling.
So you had one counselor?
Yeah, one counselor,
So teaching in theology, I imagine that there's a number of Jesuits that you taught alongside in the department.
Yes. One of the first ones I taught with that was Father Mike Dooley. Father Dooley was just an incredible man. Also, I loved his sense of humor. I should say, love his sense of humor. He taught theology right across the hallway from me. And back in those days, when the air conditioner wouldn't work very well, we'd have all our doors open. And I remember him very quietly coming up to me one day and said, "Oh, Mr. Romano, if you wouldn't mind, closing your door when you're lecturing." I said, "Oh, am I being too loud?" He goes, "No, you're being far more interesting than I am." And so it was just like, the very dry sense of humor, and anyhow, so I like Dooley. He's had several different roles in the province office and various other things.
So there's a Jesuit that ran the Pastoral Ministry Center in the late 90s, early 2000s, who I think has had a tremendous impact on a lot of Jesuits and a lot of students. Mark Thibodeaux.
Yeah.
Your involvement,
Thibodeaux,
your involvement in retreats and other areas of the school, I'm sure you interacted with him a lot.
Oh yeah.
Tell me about him.
Thibs was amazing. We got him as a baby priest. He had only been ordained like 6 months. This was his first assignment. And, of course, it was a new position for me. So it was a lot of time of exploration, finding out how we're going to run this thing. And it was, that's when we brought the Kairos program to Straight Jesuit. Thibs played an incredibly big role in that and really fought hard to maintain the integrity of the retreat. After every Kairos, in those early days, we were going on all of them. It was before we branched out and more faculty got involved, thank God. But it's fun working with Thibs, and I remember how just his humility. He would come into my office sometime and say, I don't know if I did this the right way, and it may have been a pastoral situation, or it may have been like a school situation. And he would, often come to me and ask me how, he, for my evaluation on how I thought he handled the situation or whatever. And I just remember feeling so humbled myself that here he was, a priest, he's had all this training, and yet he's coming to me for my advice or my thoughts on how well or how poorly maybe he handled a certain situation. And like all things, he handled everything well. But I so admired that humility about him and that willingness to kind of like reflect on his actions so he could grow, not only as a person and as a man, but also as a priest.
How many times do you think you saw him cry?
Oh, Thibs. It was always a competition. You can ask Carlos Romano about this. It was always a competition on retreats because Thibs and I we cry very easily. As I remember on that first Kairos, it was Thibs and me and Carlos were reading one part of the retreat, and we just kept breaking down into tears, and Romano was like, "You too. With your crying," he was like, just kept going on about us, about this. You cry enough for all three of us. So anyhow, I think it was a competition between he and I. He was a bigger crier than I am, though. I think.
I think many people who interact with him over the years just remember that being part of his personality. I think that just speaks to the gentleness and kindness of his heart. It's always interesting to hear how adults see Jesuits interacting with students. You've gone on so many retreats with so many different Jesuits over the years. Is there anything that sticks out to you, a story or two about a student that you've seen impacted by a Jesuit through their relationship or through their interaction with each other?
Yeah, I think that those sacramental moments, obviously the Eucharist stands out, and their willingness to celebrate the sacrament for us every day, it's really a blessing that sometimes I don't think we really fully appreciate. A lot of schools have Mass once a week, if they have it at all, or maybe it's just school-wide Masses. So the way the Jesuits make themselves available to students, not only the daily celebration of the Mass, but even with the fewer numbers that we have, we still are able to have adoration and confession once a week. And I know many of the boys have said how much they appreciate having that sacrament available to them as well. It kind of started with Father Wagenka when he was here, again, his first assignment after becoming a priest, an alumnus sent back to his school. It usually doesn't happen. But I just remember so many kids, as we start exploring elements of faith and that sort of thing, they'll start coming and sharing with me the things they struggle with or sins that are burdening them. And I would say, well, let's go talk to Father Wagenka. He can do something about it, And so just the fact that not only Wagenka, but Hippolyte, Father Bailon, Father Johnson just always make themselves available at the drop of a dime to hear somebody's confession, to be there just to offer them some spiritual advice. Like I said, they just, to me, that's a good shepherd, that they care about their flock, and to see them, whether it's on a retreat, at Mass, in the confessional, the way they really do shepherd us is amazing. But when the kids see the Jesuits in the classroom, in their clerics, and experts in a field other than theology. You know, it drives home the point. And I think also that physical presence draws more young men to ask, am I being called to be a Jesuit? And, you know, we've been very fortunate in the last 10, 15 years of several young men, alumni who have become Jesuits. You know, I'm thinking John Nugent, I'm thinking Wagenka, I'm thinking Paternostro, and I'm so proud that to call them, you know, students and friends, and now priests.
Can't forget Mark Fryer.
Mark Fryer as well. That's true. Yeah, they're all up together in Denver right now. Yeah. So so it's good to see, and it's wild because like I was John Nugent's confirmation sponsor, and so it's kind of fun to see him go through, you know, the Jesuit formation process, and all of those guys, and including many others that I'm forgetting, I'm sure. Just such good, gentle priest.
Sure.
You know,
This was great. You touched on so many names, and so many names that some of us may not have thought about in quite a while. So I really appreciate your time.
Yeah.
Thank you for reflecting on this. It's been wonderful talking with you. So
Nice talking
you.
with you too.
Yeah.
All right.